It's it.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Warwick's Couch Surfing. I'm Liz Fenton, and I'm here with Lisa Steinke, my co-author and best friend of over 25 years. Our most recent novel, How to Save a Life, came out in July, and it's a heart-pounding love story. I can't even remember, Lisa, I can't even remember how to like promote it. It's a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist. I still remember that. I mean, July feels
You got it, girl.
July feels like 2010 right now, like feels so long ago. Anyway, we're so excited to have Alisson Wood here with us today, and we're so excited to continually partner with Warwick's.
Yay! My turn. Wait a minute. Okay, I see Allison's got her glasses. Maybe I'll put mine on. Okay.
I love it.
You do this. I can't see. I feel like Johnny Depp in the Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Anyways, hi everybody. Mary Lee, it's good to see you again. Welcome back. And hi Robbie and Barbara and everybody. It's so fun to see everybody. So thank you guys for always supporting this. And we've got a lot of the regulars, but in case there's one or two that hasn't heard this speech yet. And Alisson, you haven't heard it yet either, but we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Liz and Lisa prompting us to do this couch surfing. So kudos to them for having us do this. You know, it's been like 26 or 28 weeks or some ungodly amount of time that we've been doing these. So it's like, you know, that's like a 6-month time period. It's like, wow. So we really appreciate everybody's support. I'm going to be putting the books in the chat. So if you are so inclined, you know, business is good, but not great. So anything that you can do to support Warwick's, gift cards, buying Alisson's book, anything that helps keep making sure that we're still around through all of this. I think that that's an important thing for us. So anyways, with that, Liz and Lisa and Alisson have a great conversation, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes.
Great. Well, thanks, Julie. Alisson, we're so excited to have you here, and I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you. Alisson Wood's writings have been published in the New York Times, the Paris Review, the Rumpus, Catapult, and No Tokens. She teaches creative writing at her New York University and at Sackett Street Writers Workshop. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of Pigeon's Pages, a New York City literary journal and reading series. Alisson was a winner of the inaugural Breakout 8 Award from Epiphany Magazine and Authors Guild. Being Lolita from Flatiron Books at Macmillan is her first book and was published August 4th. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So I'm going to turn you over to Lisa for all the hard-hitting questions. And if you guys have any questions in the audience, we're happy to, or comments, we're happy to take them in the chat.
Yeah, please feel free, because your questions are always, I feel like the readers' questions are always better than the author's questions. So please feel free to ask. All right. Susan Choi, author of the National Book Award winning Trust Exercise, had this to say about your memoir. Being Lolita is an unflinching depiction of grooming and a searing indictment of exploitative teachers. But most of all, it's an act of redemption. A powerful realization of Wood's vow to do the little I can to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen again. For those that are here, can you just that don't know already, can you tell us a little bit about what your memoir is about?
Sure. And let's see, at its core, Being Lolita is a book about power and gender and abuse. But in a more plot way, it is the story of how when I was 17 years old and a senior in high school, I was groomed and preyed upon by an English teacher in my high school. And he used Lolita. He told me it was a beautiful story about love. And at 17, I didn't know any better. So it quickly escalated from, you know, after school, he's going to help me with my writing, to something very abusive and dangerous and traumatic. So it tells that story, and then what's happened to me since. So
I love what it says inside the book jacket, just a little excerpt I'm going to read. It says, "This is the story of what happens when a young woman realizes her entire narrative must be rewritten and then takes back the pen to rewrite it." What made you decide now was the time to write this? And why did you write it?
It wasn't really a conscious choice. I think that all writers sort of some pieces, some stories, some books just feel more urgent than others. And this was the book that I had to write first. I really wanted to write like a unicorn and kittens happy book, you know, something about female friendship. And no, this was what I wrote because it was just what had to come out first. But I do think that having it come out after the beginning of this Me Too movement and in this sort of political time and this era and all of that, I think that this is the right moment for the book, I think. And so I'm really grateful that the book is out now as opposed to 5 years ago or 10 years ago or something. So yeah.
Right. I agree that it's good timing. You kept letters and notes in your journals, and you said actually in an interview that you do not recommend reading old high school journals unless you have to. And it's funny because Liz and I we have a podcast and we recently just read through some of our journals, and oh my God, I was not like, to have to face myself back then was not easy, and I was not who I remembered being in my head. But you know, yours is obviously a more serious, you know, situation. What was it like for you to go back through all that correspondence and diaries and things and kind of relive it?
Pretty awful. There's sort of no other way to put it. It was pretty awful. Right. I think that having to go through your journals from high school for anyone is going to be painful and uncomfortable and embarrassing and just like, oh my God, the things I thought, like, just, I mean, the pain like never stops, just doing it, period. But then having to go back when there's so much trauma involved, that was very hard in a different way. And honestly, it made me realize how much worse the experience was than in some ways that I thought of it. For instance, I thought that, well, here's a specific example. When I was working on the book, I didn't write chronologically. I wrote the moments that sort of seemed the most like alive or fresh, or the ones that I could remember with the most clarity. So there's this one scene that comes in the first section of the book when I'm still in high school, when when the teacher wants to know my bra size. So and this was in late 90s, early 2000s. I'm not supposed to give the exact year, but pre-cell phones, pre-Snapchat, pre-digital cameras, before any of that. So he offers to trade me the size of his penis for my bra size, which is incredibly inappropriate, obviously. But in my mind, I thought that it had happened in May. So like I would have been 18. It would have almost been, you know, sort of the end of our secret time when it's like, we're about to be dating, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't make it any better, but like in my head, it made it a little bit better. But then when I was going through my journals, I found an entry from November 21st referencing that. So it happened in November. So I was squarely 17. He had known me for at most 2 months, which also shows how quickly it escalated from, you know, my creative writing teacher sort of set us up to meet after school for him to encourage my writing because he was a writer too. And she thought I was really good, but needed more support. And that very quickly went from writing to, hey, what's your bra size? Which today, of course, would be a dick pic, and then coercing me for a, you know, picture of my boobs. I mean, like, let's be real. The same thing, just different tools. So that's an example. That specifically is an example of a time when my journals forced me to acknowledge really like how awful it was. So yeah.
Well, in your opening chapter is very powerful. It's about the first time he kissed you. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, and then also how you made your decision to start the book there.
Well, that opening is one of the first things that I wrote. It was one of those just a scene, like a memory from that time that was just crystal clear for me. So that was one of the first scenes that I wrote. And in a lot of ways, it stayed pretty much the same, which is unusual. A lot of times, I mean, large parts of my book went through multiple rounds of big edits, like changing significantly. But the opening, right out the gate, was kind of like, this is the opening. And the same thing with the title. It's always been Being Lolita, which is very unusual. Like sometimes people have like half a dozen or more title changes. Like before it's even published, they're changing the title. And then when a publisher gets it, they change the title. It's always been Being Lolita. You know, I just sort of stumbled upon those two things right out the gate, which I'm very lucky for.
Yes.
I'm very lucky. I wanted to do a couple things in the opening. I wanted to try to tell the reader everything that they needed to know about the story going in, which is, you know, the opening line is, the first time he kissed me, it wasn't on the mouth. I hadn't read the book yet. And so I really tried to, by setting that up, it's like, well, the first time he kissed me, so there's a guy, he kissed me, it wasn't on the mouth. So therefore already it's like subverting the expectation of like where a kiss is supposed to happen. And, you know, the title of the book is called Being Lolita, and there isn't a chapter break. It goes straight into the opening. And then, you know, the second line of the book is, I haven't read the book yet. He told me it was a beautiful story about love, but you know it's Lolita because that's the title, and that would you sort of run right into. Mm-hmm. So sorry, I'm getting all like crafty here.
No, it's interesting though. I mean, I'm in. I think everybody else is too.
And I really wanted it to be very sort of sexy, but also dark. I really tried to establish the like sexual tension and like the excitement part of it, because one thing that was really important to me in this book was that I was true to how I experienced it at the time, which was at 17, I thought I was so lucky. I thought this was so wonderful. How, you know, oh my goodness, I lapped it up, you know, that kind of attention from a male teacher who everybody thought was cute. And, you know, he's sneaking around to see me. I mean, I thought it was the best. So I wanted to stay true to that. I did not want to write a story about a monster from my 36-year-old perspective. That's a boring story. And it's also not true, because at the time, that's not how we saw it. So I wanted to try to capture that feeling of like teenage excitement and like sort of the sexiness, but also have these sort of dark things, because it was a very dark story in actuality. There's one point where I reference, so whenever we would go to the diner, we would write a lot. We would write back and forth on like napkins, paper placemats, everything. But then before we would leave, he would rip them up and put them into our water glasses. So that way we couldn't get caught. And the way that I phrased it was, I said I would watch them lose their shape and the ink bleed like in the glasses. So sort of small things like that, like the ink bleed, you know, I sort of tried to have some underscored violence or things happening. So yeah, I sort of tried to create everything. I tried to get everything out there that the readers could need information wise, and then get them interested.
I think it worked. I mean, it hooked me in. I was like, you know, I was standing up reading, and then I sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to be here for a while. You know, it's just, you really just like completely sucked in from the get-go. So it worked. I've heard Tell us a little bit about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I've heard it's a very quick read. I've heard that people read it pretty quickly for the most part.
Yep. Yeah, because you can't stop reading it. It's very, you know, it seems weird to say this to you because it's your real life, but it's very engrossing. You're very sucked in by, you know, what happened to you. Yeah. So it is a quick read in a good way. Tell us a little bit about you have the book in 3 sections: nymph, capture, and dissection. Can you just explain to us a little bit about why you structured it that way and what those separate sections represent?
Yeah, of course. I feel like in a lot of ways well, since the book is called Being Lolita, and Lolita has such a big part in this story, I think structure is really hard, especially with bigger projects. I just think structure is hard. And it's so important because how you tell a story is just as important as what the story is. And I chose to do it in 3 parts because Lolita, the original Nabokov novel, is in 2 parts, parts 1 and part 2. And I realized reading the Nabokov about the millionth time when I was struggling with my own structure that, oh, here it is. So basically the structure of both of our books is part 1 is the sort of extended seduction. For Nabokov, it's when Humbert meets Dolores Hayes, who he calls Lolita. He sort of seduces her over time and, you know, or he doesn't actually seduce her, but he sort of like, you know, starts plotting, obsessing, etc. In my book, part 1 is that senior year of high school when I met the teacher and things escalated. The break between parts 1 and part 2 in both books is when the relationship is sexually consummated for the first time. In Nabokov, it's a pretty clear rape. In mine, it was consensual. I wanted this. It was not, however, a positive experience, but nonetheless, it was consensual. And part 2 in both books is sort of this extended escape, trying to not get caught. There's all these car rides. I mean, it's funny because it's just so right there. I mean, even in my experience, we went up to Ithaca a lot, which is where the teacher had gone to Cornell and ended up going to undergraduate there. Nabokov had taught at Cornell, and it's, you know, assumed that in the Nabokov, Ithaca is Beardsley, which is where they settle down, which is where Humbert and Dolores settle down briefly. So it's just all, there were all these like obvious overlaps. So once I figured it out, I was like, oh, this is so easy right here. But then at the end of the Nabokov, Dolores is dead. Everybody's dead. It's practically Shakespearean in the amount of like death. Everyone's dead. Humbert, the mother, Quilty, Dolores, everyone's dead. We sort of skip over that, but I didn't die. So I get a part 3. So part 3 is sort of me examining how this situation impacted my life, how it determined a lot of other things about me, and me just sort of trying to, you know, dissect, if you want to keep the butterfly metaphor, what happened. Oh, and so nymph is the adolescent pre-pupatory stage of a butterfly or an insect. And it's also, you know, nymph is also sort of one of those words that Humbert constantly used to talk about Lolita. Capture is sort of, that's the escape, the attempts to escape, the driving around endlessly, sort of feeling caught. And also, again, that sort of like nice little duality with butterflies. And dissection, yeah, me sort of trying to figure it out, which as well goes along with the butterflies. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it really helps as a reader to just kind of keep it in sections. At least for me, I felt that way. So it worked really well. People suggested that you make this a novel. I read. Tell me a little bit about that and what your response was.
My response was no. My general response was, no, you are missing the point. So yeah, I got so many suggestions. Why aren't you writing this as a novel? Like, why isn't this fiction? Like, duh. And I was like, no, the point of this story, of this book, is the fact that it is real. The fact that this happened to me, because this situation is something that is hypersexualized, romanticized. There have been so many movies and TV plots and books already that feature some sort of like, like young seductress Jezebel, you know, sex pot teenager who is dangerous and preys upon these older men and like ruins their lives with their sex. And it's like, that's not how this works. That's really not how this works. So I really felt like it was important to, in some ways, tell the real story of what happens when these sorts of, see, this is something else that's strange and that bothers me. I hate that we have to use the word relationship I had a relationship with the teacher,
Mhm.
but I don't think that's a great word for it. Like relationship suggests some sort of like equality or,
Mhm.
you know, consent. Dating, I mean, we weren't dating. He wasn't my boyfriend.
Right.
I think
Right.
affair also makes it seem to sort of like, ooh, we were having an affair. And it's like, that's not it either. So something that's really important to me as a writer and sort of as a person and as a feminist is the importance of words and the power of naming things. And I talk a lot about that in my book, and also it's everywhere in the Nabokov. And there's no word for this, which I always think is interesting. What we don't have words for is just as interesting, I think,
Right.
as all the things we do have words for or have so many words for. It's like, you know, how when you want to shame a woman for her sexuality, there's endless options. With a man, or fewer that are negative, or fewer.
Right.
So, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think it was something that I really wanted to be thoughtful about and be mindful about. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also it's a, what has been the reaction, I guess, from your readers so far and just from making it public? I mean, what are you finding? Because talking about your actual story is a humongous difference from, making a fictionalized novel. So how has it been having it out there as a memoir?
Honestly, the reactions and the messages and emails I get from my readers are the best part of this. It
Right.
truly. I still get messages almost every day, and it's been out for 3 months. The fact that I'm still hearing from readers so often, I think, is so meaningful. It makes me aware of how much I wish I'd had a book like this. So many of the messages most of the messages are pretty much the same. They're almost entirely from women. There are these very nice sort of quick messages. Hi, I loved your book. Just wanted you to know, thank you. And sometimes people will add specific things like something similar happened to me. I feel really acknowledged or understood or seen, or, you know, things like that. And the first time I got one of those messages, I cried. Like I just the tears, and the book wasn't even out yet. And someone had gotten like an early copy, and I just burst into tears because it was just so meaningful to know that that my book was impactful for somebody else, that my book made someone feel better about what happened to them. And I think as well, publishing this book has made me realize how common this is. It is wildly common. It's just something that we don't talk a lot about, and it's not something that is very discussed openly, except in sort of like a porn way. Like if you look up Lolita or like student teacher relationship, you find porn real quick in the searches. Real quick, porn comes up. So that's
Right.
just an idea of like how we sexualize this relationship. But and it's made me really angry as well, because so often, friends or people I know have also revealed things, and so often the teachers did not lose their license. Nothing happened to them. They didn't suffer any consequences. And a lot of times it becomes a case of, passing the trash, which I think is something very similar to what happened to me, because allegedly the year after this happened with me, it had happened, something similar happened with another girl. And this time the administration was not able to sort of ignore it, but instead of firing him or having an investigation, they just waited till the end of the year and did not renew his contract. So he got to continue teaching. And it's just like with Catholic priests or anywhere else in our world, you just don't want to take responsibility. You don't want to acknowledge it because of the scandal. You just pass the trash. And I think that is incredibly, incredibly wrong. And I really wish there were laws in place or something that would not allow districts to do this, because they really should be prioritizing the safety of their school and their students versus their reputation, or, yeah. So that's something that I'm newly angry about, because it's also made me realize how, the administration, other teachers were aware. I heard from some of my past teachers or people who knew them, and they were like, oh yeah, everyone knew about this. It was an open secret. And I was like, what?
Really?
I thought I was like so slick and so smooth, and like, shocker, I was not.
But nobody wanted to step in to protect or help you. This was just kind of going on, and
which is also illegal because teachers are mandated reporters. This was 20 years ago, though, so I don't know if the laws were the same 20 years ago. But now doing this would be firmly illegal. But then there would also be the issue of, well, I was 18 at most. I was above the age of consent.
Not the whole time, but
I was still above the age of consent in Connecticut. But it's like, why does that protect anyone?
Right.
Who's a teacher in my high school?
Well, right. There
should be clear laws, I think, and there are not, which frustrate me as well, that like teachers should not be able to date their students. Like,
absolutely not. No.
And it's not.
Completely agree with you.
And that drives me nuts. Same thing in a college level, in a university level.
I guess all the more reason why you writing this book as a memoir is important right now.
Exactly,
it again gets that message out there. This is happening.
Yeah.
This happened then, this has happened now, this is going to happen later, and we need to be aware.
And it's not just some sexy fantasy. It's incredibly damaging and dangerous and traumatic and bad for everyone. So yeah, that's why I wanted it to be a memoir.
What was yeah, I just think it's crazy that there still aren't laws about this, that it's going on and nothing's happening. It's just so frustrating to hear. But at least this is keeping it in discussion, and someone sees it in the bookstore, they pick it up, they read it, at least it's another person learning and hopefully, changing their mindset.
Yeah.
A little bit of something. Was writing the book anything like what you expected it to be? And were there chapters that were harder to write than other chapters, or was it just all hard?
It was all hard, but there were definitely chapters that were a lot harder than others. The book took longer than I thought it would. In general, I knew it was going to be hard. I have enough writer friends that I was like, all right, I have some expectations. Right. I was like, this is not going to be easy. I know that. But it was harder than I thought it was, or what I thought it was going to be. And the chapters detailing some of the most sort of violent or cruel moments, those were really hard to write. And those just took a lot of time. Sometimes I would have to like take a break and just sort of like walk away from it for a week or two or three. Right. But I'm very lucky in that I have a wonderful therapist who I've had for years, who knows me pre-book.
Right.
Whenever I teach memoir, personal essay, I always tell my students, whether they're in undergrad or they're adults, because I teach a lot of classes that are open to anyone. I always say, well, if you're working on anything that has to do with trauma, step one is get yourself a good therapist. Because it's hard. If you're going to be fully honest and authentic and real about what happened, it's going to be hard. There's no way to get around that. And you have to be doing the processing off the page. Like, if you're trying to do all the processing in the thing that you're writing, you're too close. You can't take edits. You can't see it. You can't let it go. You need to be able to sort of do the processing off the page and then write it. When we're talking about something for publication, writing as a therapeutic practice is incredibly valid and so useful, and I recommend it all the time. But when you're thinking about like if you're under contract for a book, you're not,
right.
It cannot be your therapeutic writing diary. It's got to be something else. So
right. Yeah. I think I read that you said it should be hard though. It's going to make it better. It's going to definitely make the story more emotional, more real for the reader.
Yeah, it should be hard because it was hard. And if it's not hard for me to write it, then it's probably not going to be truthful. you know?
I thought something else interesting that I read is that you had a playlist of
Yeah.
songs from that time period, and
Yeah.
I guess how did that help, and how did that make it maybe even harder?
No, I
Those
found that was
songs.
actually I found really helpful because it was a really useful tool for me to sort of like go. Music is very evocative for me. Like
Mhm.
even now I hear a song and like if it's a certain song, I'm like, boyfriend from 10th grade, Derek Gallen. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Certain songs can be very, very like specific to a moment. And so what I did was I made 2 playlists. And I'm gonna pull one of them up right now so I can like tell you what they are.
Yeah, I'm curious. Because
Okay.
this was, what year was, can you say what year or no? You're not supposed to say. You said you're not supposed.
Very early 2000s was when this
Okay,
happened.
early 2000s.
School from
Right.
like late 90s, you know.
Okay.
One of them is called High School Drama. And sorry, High School Feelings. And it has Crash Into Me by Dave Matthews Band, Colorblind by the Counting Crows, Glycerine by Bush Wonderwall. It's got some Tori Amos. You Were Meant for Me by Jewel, Everlong.
Oh my gosh, Jewel.
Oh my God, I know Jewel. But
What's
all these
she doing now?
I think she's actually doing children's albums.
Oh, that's awesome.
Doing children's albums. But yeah, like all these like big emotional songs, you know, that would sort of, because I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like when I was in high school, you're feeling so many of these things for the first time, you know, so it all feels so huge and like the world is opening up as it happens, and you've never experienced anything else. So literally everything feels life or death because you have no perspective. You have no perspective. So it's like, it was all these like really big songs and like big emotions and songs that I remember like bouncing around to in high school. And then I made another playlist called Teenage Girl that had like PJ Harvey, Hole, 9 Inch Nails, Portishead, Fiona
9 Inch Nail. I haven't thought about some of these bands in a while.
Yep, it had Liz Phair, You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette. Lot of Tori Amos. Yeah.
Good old Tori.
Oh, Tori. Yeah, but you know, all these songs I remember, again, like I remembered listening to and like feeling very much like, oh, this woman understands me. This is how I feel, you know, in that like very sort of like big way. And it was really helpful because a lot of times when I was writing the book, you know, it can be difficult to sort of have to like kind of get back in, you know, because I was juggling 5 jobs plus grad schools and working on the book. So, you know, I would sort of have to like get back into writing mode kind of quickly. So I found myself listening to those playlists all the time.
Yeah. Well, music helps. I mean, for me too, just sit down. I have to have some song playing and I try to put something on the mood for what the scene is, but it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And it really like helped me sort of like sink into, okay, 17-year-old Allison who has all these feelings, all the feelings ever.
All the feelings.
All the
feelings. Well, I just want to tell everyone that this book is really good and I highly recommend it. And thank you so much for writing it. Again, I think it's a powerful story to tell and many people can benefit from reading it. Before I give it over to Julie, can you just tell us where everybody can find you on social media or online if they want to know more about you?
I am at Literary T Swift on Twitter, which I think is such a clever handle.
Pretty good.
I've got it forever. I think it's cute. And then on Instagram, I'm just at Allison Wood with Allison spelled funny. So yeah, that's me.
Okay. All right. All right, Julie.
Hey, I'm on. So I just had a quick question. There was a great conversation, and thank you both, Lisa. That was great questions, and Allison, thanks for being so open. Because it's a tough conversation to have. So thank you. But I was thinking to myself, have you thought about getting into any kind of legislation, like to change law? I mean, or a foundation or something? Have you thought about anything like that?
Yes, I have. And I've been, there's a lot of political stuff in the air right now. Just some things that's, taking up people's minds right now. But yes, it is something I'm thinking a lot about. And I'm good friends with Garrett Conley, who wrote Boy Erased, and which deals with conversion therapy. And he's done so much amazing legislative and advocacy work against conversion therapy in this country. And he's a good friend of mine. So we were actually just talking earlier today about what are the next steps I want to take? Like, how do I sort of, try to do something similar? Because I definitely feel like there are specific things that laws could do to help this from happening. And it seems really obvious. And I don't know why it's so hard.
Sometimes those power structures, though, are really hard to break. And
patriarchy.
Well, and the one thing that you mentioned, which is one of the things that unfortunately is, I think what a big one is that schools are so worried about their reputations, because then it's money, and it's just like, so there's so much at play. There's a lot of big money. So anyways, good luck with that, because I was thinking it's like, this is a launch for something that could maybe really make a huge difference.
I really do think it's so similar to like the Catholic Church. I really do. There's a lot of money. There's, because of the way that so many schools are, sort of put together as districts, and then there's a state board of ed, and then I think it's really quite similar in how the system works. To the
any people in power that are preying on, it's just like, and preying on younger kids, it's just like, anyway. So with that, thank you, Allison, for being with us. This was amazing. And Lisa, again, thank you. And Liz, if you have watched the replay, thanks, Liz. So anyways, this is recorded. It'll go on our YouTube channel. So if somebody had to leave, and they can pop back and check it out. So with that, I will say goodnight to everybody, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, the book. Oh, I need to hold up my copy of the book.
I forgot to hold up my copy too.
Already.
Yeah, I should put my sunglasses back on. I'll have to get these glasses to your daughter.
Yes, she would love them.
Oh, Lisa, I'm happy to send you a pair. Don't worry about it.
Oh, awesome. I would love it. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. I'll hit up your publicist. I can hit up your publicist.
Perfect. All right. Bye, you guys.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.